I believe we do have a quorum. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the last meeting, July 21st. We have a motion.
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes approved. Thank you. With everyone's approval, I would like to move the order of business around just a little bit. And I hope I don't get anybody upset here, but I believe that our item with the Gum Swamp is going to take a little bit longer than everybody else. So with everybody's approval, I'll let go ahead and do new business for rezoning for Antonio Torres, and leave the thing first, and then Gum Swamp Solar second. Do you have any objections?
Move.
All right. First order of business is a request for rezoning of Antonio Torres for a lot for, as it says, for a wholesale office building on Aberdeen Road. This is, I think the zoning, the map is in here. This is out on the east side of the road near the North Fire Station, North Volunteer Fire Station, to give everybody a little bit of a reference. We're asking for this to be rezoned from residential agricultural to highway commercial. We have any discussion, anybody representing the, Mr. Torres here that would like to speak? Anybody representing Mr. Torres at all?
I'm Mr. Torres. I didn't know I could bring a representative, but I'm Mr. Torres. I would like to get it rezoned if that's possible.
Okay, so you, don't have anything else to say, just let it get a rezoned.
Well, I just want to I'm in the car business.
Okay,
And with the COVID and everything going on, should I stand or should I sit? It's okay to sit?
you're fine.
Okay,
You're fine.
but with all the stuff going on, I'm moving my business more into like wholesaling to the dealerships versus dealing with the public. It's based on all the measures of having masks, and some people believe in having a mask, some people do not believe in it. Some believe in shots, some does not. But when I'm dealing with the dealerships, I just have the cars hauled out to them. And instead of me having to come to town, I can actually just do everything there at my house and haul them on my trailer and take them to the dealer, or have them shipped from the dealers there. And the purpose of it is just to have a place to hang my license.
Right.
So, just to be approved by DMV, and I have to do all that stuff too as well, other than this. I have to get it approved from DMV and all that stuff.
So you're already doing this, you just want to move the location?
Exactly. Yes,
Okay.
sir. I'm here in Laurinburg now,
Okay.
in town. Yes, sir.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Torres, any discussion?
So the zoning is just for your office.
Yes,
It's
sir.
not to put 100 cars out there.
No, I wish I could afford to have 100, but no, no, sir. It's just for my license, to be legal and be able to have business, because I buy cars from the franchise dealers and then I'll take them to the independent dealers. And I'll sell them to the ones here, and I'll sell them in Charlotte, and I'll take them to the auctions, and I'll run them through the sale. And that's the gist of, my business, or the bulk of it. And I do retail some to individuals, but the bulk of my business is selling to the dealers and stuff.
So we can't expect 4 acres of cars out there and in the future. You just expect a little office building with a fence or something like that. Then.
Right, exactly.
How big an office?
I'm just gonna get one of the pre-wired buildings that they sell here on I'm not sure the name of the road because I'm new here. But it's, they have the little buildings, they're already pre-wired, you can go up there and buy them and use that and turn it into an office.
Like a utility shed kind of.
Yeah, it's basically what it is, just a place that, they require us 96 square feet to be legal by DMV.
Any other discussion? Do you have any legal issues that you can think of?
No, sir, I didn't know whether anyone else was here that wanted to speak. about it, either for or against it, but, you know, you can call for that if you like to.
Is there anyone else here who would like to speak for Mr. Torres or against Mr. Torres? And if not,
Well, I had a neighbor contact me, asking me questions about the meeting that they received a letter. And in the letter, it said the public hearing would be at the county commissioner meeting, and they were asking, could they come to this meeting to speak? And I said, well, I really don't know how to answer that, because some meetings the public wasn't allowed, and then some meetings the public was. So I just don't want to
as
get,
far as I know, this meeting is always open to the
well,
public.
that's what I told him, he could come and listen, but I wouldn't know that he could speak.
Right.
So they're planning to go to the other, but I didn't want to be, if he watches this, I don't want to be crucified for giving him incorrect information. Because his letter said to come to the public hearing, which would be the county commissioner meeting.
Right.
I have one question. You're in town doing this now,
Yes, sir.
and that location's not working anymore?
Oh, no, it works fine, but it'll save me money, you know, if you think about it. I'll spend about $1,000 a month here. So over 5 years, if I stay there for 5 years, I'm gonna spend $60,000 when I have this property that I can use 1/4 of an acre on and just put an office there, and I can save money and be a little bit safer than being in town. So that's, basically, but the place I have is great. You know, and it serves a purpose. I don't store a lot of cars there. You know, the most I've ever had there was 3 or 4 cars, because most of the cars are en route to different auctions or to a dealer.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Any more discussion?
I have a question, because I just don't know. This is my first time ever doing this. So what is the next process? How does it go from whatever you guys decide today, and then it goes to the next thing? Do I need to bring in paperwork? Do I need to bring in, because I just came in here, I didn't bring an attorney, I didn't bring anything, I just came in.
And you don't need one.
Oh, okay.
But there's a couple of them you have.
Hey, I need some help. So, I just don't know, you know what I mean? And sometimes not knowing is the worst thing. So kind of want to know, what to expect on the next step.
But technically, we're not an authoritative group. We don't have the authority to do anything other than to approve the rezoning and send it to the county commissioners. And then they would have to be the final legislative body that would say yea or nay. So once we do our approval here or refuse to approve, if we refuse to approve, you can resubmit at a later time. But if we approve it, then the next step would be the county commissioners.
Because my thing is, I know it's another car lot that had basically done the same thing on the same road, maybe a few miles away. So I didn't know if, that I would be able to piggyback based off of him based on what he did at his house. I mean, is it just always different times things are just changing that much, or how does that work?
And you've been with us legally longer than anybody
That's a
else here.
separate distinct situation. If this board approves the request, then it will go to the October 4th meeting of the Board of Commissioners for their final determination on it.
So I guess it's up to us to say yea or nay.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
You make a recommendation on this type of request, and the commissioners have the final say on it.
If there's no more discussion, all in favor of rezoning, say aye.
I make a motion to approve it.
I second. Thank you. Keep me straight, Sam. All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Person. Sir?
You
Yeah,
say-
I oppose it, yep.
Okay. I believe we,
You got the majority.
got the majority.
Am I allowed to ask why? Why was it opposed? Is that, or that's
Yeah,
not, you can't do that? I mean,
Well, the majority was for it. I'm opposed to it, but I just don't know
how it would look having a small 8 by 10 storage building out there set up as a business on the road.
Well, they have them, the places that are selling, right here, they're selling the buildings are set up in an 8 by 10.
It makes no difference. You got your approval.
All right, thanks a lot, I appreciate it.
Okay, next is, item on the
Thank you.
agenda.
Thanks.
Thanks, sir.
Mhm.
Next item on the agenda with, moving Mr. Bethay. Do we have anybody here to represent Mr. Bethay?
Mr. Bethay, he just called me, he's in the back of the building, he's come through the back, he's got confused about how to get around here. He was asking if somebody could come around and give
Easy
you.
to do.
That's the guy. Well, we're here on behalf of.
We're here on behalf of him too.
Wait just a minute, see if they gets in.
I didn't think he was coming.
Amazing.
Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the, paperwork for the request for rezoning on this? On Mr. Bethay's, on Leisure Road? There's an application for the permit, but on the application, there's not a present zoning or a proposed zoning district. Present zoning is RA, and discussion with Ed, it looks like, and Brooke, the zoning would probably need to go highway commercial, but let Mr. Fay get in.
We can fill you in on exactly what the business is gonna be. The business is gonna be a car restoration business. It's gonna be a private, person. It's not gonna be open to the public. It's gonna be just private, in-person type business only. It's not gonna be open to the public whatsoever. It's gonna be 100% restoration of classic auto type vehicles. It's not gonna be any type of insurance or collision or anything like that.
Let's wait, let,
Mr.
Brooke get back in
Bethay.
and so she can take her minutes. I think we got some folks lost. Somebody needs to turn the AC down a little bit. You made it. And you are Mr. Bethany?
Yes, I am, sir.
All right. And the other folks that are here representing you are with you.
Yes, sir.
Would you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Charles Rodney Haywood.
I'm Denton Russo.
And, Mr. Haywood, you own this property, correct?
I will be. Yes, sir, I will.
Okay. Mr. Bethany, you own the property.
Yes, sir, I do.
And
I will be purchasing it from you.
And the question here is whether or not you will be able to rezone.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna make sure it rezones before we purchase. That way, we can put this business here because, if it does not rezone, then there's no use of buying the property.
Where is the parcel that you want rezoned?
It's been waiting on to be broke up. It's been, I guess,
On Leisure Road.
It's on Leisure Road here.
But the map that's submitted is a large tract of land.
yeah, it's been waiting to be,
On the county side,
Yes.
the zoning, about a half a mile in from 15401.
it's been waiting to get a survey.
Back.
That's all I'm talking about.
This is Leisure Road. This is Leisure Road. This is the lot. This section.
I think in South Carolina.
It's gonna be a 5.1 acre.
Yeah, if we look at the current, zoning requirements, before we can actually rezone, we do have to have a site plan submitted. So we can't just at random say, yes, we'll rezone something without knowing what we're gonna rezone. So we would not need to have something a little bit more substantial and a little bit more delineated. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you would actually have to have a site map and have it surveyed and then resubmit that land, that plat for rezoning. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what
sir?
we've been trying to.
Surveyor's been out sick.
I think he's been a little bit behind because he's been.
Everyone.
Oh, you're the holdup.
Yeah.
I didn't want to point any fingers.
We've actually been trying to do this for, about 2 months.
We know what John and his family's been through.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Every surveyor in the state is extremely swamped.
Yeah.
It's been unbelievable.
It's gonna be a 40 by 60 building and an additional 40 by 40 building behind it is basically what the buildings are gonna be. And we just haven't been able to get the land surveyed yet in order to do what we're doing. We were trying to get on this month's planning to have it zoned and try to get everything done, but things just hadn't fell in place.
Well, I believe to comply with the ordinance, though, we would need to have a site map, something specific before we can rezone.
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me. Is that just for that particular zoning? It's required site plan?
We have to know what
No, this is for zoning permit required, site plan required for zoning permit.
well, you have to know where the property is located, and this is a multi-acre tract. I'm not
That's
saying-
468 acres, and we don't know which 5 acres.
I just didn't know with the last one that we just approved. He's wanting what, a quarter acre? We just assumed it was on the highway. Does that not require a site plan too?
I think it was asking for the entire lot to be rezoned.
No,
Is what,
Quarter acre of
Yeah.
that 14 tract.
okay, well, I misread the zoning documents. And
Yeah, I think that's why that question was asked about which part of that land you want to use for storing this and storing that.
I know just because I drove by there and I seen where the earthwork had been done. So I presume that's where the building's gonna go. But if that's a requirement, I just didn't know. That's why I just wanted to bring it up.
Here is, Jim,
pardon me?
here's the red square here. It is kind of, put where he would like to have the 5 acres, the gentleman in the back,
The 5.1 acres, that's where it's been drawn out, but we were gonna have it surveyed out.
just like a corner of that acre, not like sitting dead in the middle.
Yeah.
It's gonna put up
The way I read this, and I may be reading it wrong, we really can't vote on anything unless we have a site plan survey and in front of us. Is that correct? If am I reading
So I
this
think
ordinance
there, I
correct?
think there are a couple of issues. One, this is a huge tract, and up until, you may have something showing where it is, but the other issue is, I know the agenda shows it as a highway commercial request, but I think I'm like you, I don't think I saw that in the request itself as to what it was going to be rezoned to.
It's not on the request, it was just put on the agenda.
Right.
That's my mistake.
Well, no, I don't think you're required to fill the application out. I think the applicant does that.
Well, she told us what to put on there. I thought we put it on. I'm sorry, we didn't.
It may be
No,
somewhere
it's
on there, I
not
just
there.
don't see it. Can you see it?
No.
It's not on there.
HA, I think we wrote, didn't we?
I've got a
R8
copy
HA.
right here.
R8 HA.
Is that the agenda or is that the actual paperwork?
on the board department.
No, I mean the classification, he wants to go to it.
That's probably referred.
No, the
Oh,
classification.
the classification is on there, huh?
was on the first sheet, not the second one. And we had to,
On the first sheet.
So at the top, which says present zoning, Nathan's mark.
It doesn't, there's nothing for present or proposed.
Right. So does it sound like the application needs to be reviewed, the site plan needs to be done, and bring us a drawing of where the building's gonna be and the proposed piece of land?
That's the way I read it, looking at the ordinances. And again, I'll refer back to Ed and again, Sam, because both of them have more experience with this than any of us.
Well, I think it's incumbent on the applicant to request whatever rezoning the applicant believes is appropriate for his use.
So he could actually do a site plan without having a survey.
Well, I'm talking about the type of
Yeah.
zoning he wants it reclassified to. Sam, and it's not on the application.
Right.
I think that, and I'm not sure you have to have a full-blown site plan with the topo and all that, but it's something to show where it's gonna be. The dimensions.
And Brooke has something.
It's just his markings on a GIS form of where he would like the 5.1 acres to be.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if you feel comfortable with that, you could suggest to the applicant that they have that ready by October 4th when the commissioners are on meeting. I think they would prefer to have, if the board wants to move forward with it.
Yeah, I feel that would be.
So we just need to have it surveyed off by then, right?
No, they don't even
Just
take
have a
survey.
site plan drawn.
I think you can plot it based on your deeds, and that would be accurate enough for us to see where it is, and then if it's approved, then you can have the expense of actually producing the map and setting irons and all that good stuff and have it recorded.
And highway commercial is what you want.
According to this, you can provide a map
I've got lots of
or a
minutes.
sketch
Yes, sir. Okay.
with sufficient clarity and detail. So I think that Brooke has that. So with that in mind,
Just locate the building on the map.
I'm
So
still a
what you're
little,
saying, that map could be acceptable if we chose it to be? Is that what you're saying?
Have you seen it? I mean, it's not in the package, I don't know.
I actually, I wasn't even where you even came visit.
What?
I didn't know he had visited my office.
Oh, okay. I think it's important that whatever action the Board of Commissioners ultimately takes, we have an accurate description or depiction of what it is they've either approved or denied. So
That's what's concerning me.
Right.
I do believe that it probably would be best if you could do something a little bit more in detail, and then have it prepared for us for our October meeting. And if we do by chance have a meeting prior to that, which there may be a circumstance which we just have to do that, we'll try to get in touch with you. But at this time, I'd like to suggest we table this until the next meeting, make sure we got all our ducks in a row, and y'all have your plan a little bit better.
Okay. And I'll try to be on time, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, need a motion, second. Need a motion.
Did I just make a motion?
You can, but you need a second on that.
I've made that motion now.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Motion passed. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Pretty good.
Just got,
Thanks.
The third item of business is going to take us a little bit longer. Maybe, maybe not. We have an application from Gum Swamp Solar to rezone. And scroll back through this 147 pages and find out where I'm going.
And it's 98% of it's them, in the middle of all places.
All right. There's the deeds. Multiple deeds.
So what you're saying is they need a little less detail.
I think there's every deed for every plot and every piece of property from late 1800s in here. Well,
If the board would want, we also have, blown up poster boards showing the map of the site as well, if that's helpful.
and I can't even find the application in here.
It should be the first page.
There's the deed.
Page 145
It is page 145?
of our packet. Footnote, that's wrong.
And I'll tell you, it's all good.
Right.
I got back to Mr. Buffet.
About page 10, if it's same as this hard copy.
This could be for all the deed work.
It's right after the 501 deal and then
Res.
I think it's 10, 11, and
There we go. Okay, we also have this request for rezoning does not have the present or the proposed zoning district on it. But it is in the minutes, I believe, the agenda. I can find that. Yeah, the agenda asks for request for conditional use permit to construct solar arrays, use clean renewable energy. There's plenty of maps in here, so everybody, if you've looked at it. If not, if you go out to the umbrella factory off of 74, turn north, it's about a mile off of 74 north of the umbrella factory. It's a large area of land, mostly with pines and sand, up in the sand hills. Do we have, I think we have some folks who would like to speak with us.
Yes. And Jim, I want to keep the details to a minimum. I think that was really what you asked. I'm Tom Terrell with the law firm Fox Rothschild in the Greensboro office. The details that you saw, I think, if nothing else, illustrate that this is a company that does it right. I have represented a lot of companies in this field for the last 10, 12 years. Pine-Gate Renewables, I can say more laudable things about that company than just about anybody I get to represent. A couple of very high-level points. This is only on 760 acres. I know that sounds like I'm making fun of that, but the fact is, ZB Pate owns thousands of acres cumulatively. I think we all know that. But this is only 760 acres for an 80 megawatt facility.
It is actually part of another solar farm that's tapping into the same monstrous transmission lines that cross Andrew Jackson. I think everybody has seen them many times. That's called Juno Solar. It's being going through right now in Richmond, but combined, it will be the two of them, the largest solar farm in all of North Carolina, on land that very few people can see. And I'm gonna show you a map, and Jen has a larger map that illustrates that point. It will be enough to power the two combined about 70,000 homes. It will do a lot to help stabilize rates in the region. This is the most interesting solar farm that I've probably done 150 to 200. I don't count them. It is the only solar farm, I think, in my memory, that has no neighbor who can look out their door to see it. You can drive down McFarland Road and there's no house either side. You can go down Curry Road, there's no house either side. You can't see it from Andrew Jackson, but there will be a buffer. I'm gonna tell you how small that buffer is. From the east side over to the next dirt road is about 8,000 linear feet. And from the west side over to Marks Creek Road, it's about 2,500 feet. So, and through trees that will continue to be growing. In other words, this is in a desolate area. We had two neighborhood meetings for the portion that's in Scotland County. Technically, if you touch the ZV property, we consider you to be an adjoining owner. And we want you to have the respect of being considered an adjoining owner, even though you might be 6,000, 7,000 linear feet away. We had two meetings. We combined them with the folks in the Richmond County. The first time we met at the Free Will Baptist Church on the south side of the highway. We had maybe a dozen people come. We had the next one meeting, had about a dozen people come. It was at Holiday Inn Express. Not a single person said, don't do this. We did not get any opposition. But what we did hear was, of all those who came, the most common question was, can you put solar on my land too? And it caught us a little bit by surprise. And the fact is, there actually could be, we don't know, that's a crystal ball we don't have. There could be a phase two where we add, and those people could have that opportunity. I think everybody has a notebook. I want to take just 2 minutes to walk you through on the tab project overview. There's a site plan. You see in yellow, you can see toward the bottom, you see where McFarland Road is. Jen is going to show you in just a second and bring a larger map up that says the same thing. But this map illustrates how desolate this site is. We have a Q&A here on solar is the next tab. We write these things so that we can share them with neighbors. In fact, a lot of this information in the Q&A tab is what we share so that we don't try to get too technical and it's very accessible. The next tab is a letter to the neighbors. You'll see exactly what we sent out to them. It wasn't just a letter saying, come to a meeting. It was a letter that provided them, in the first instance, a lot of information. What is solar? Why do we have solar? What are the impacts of solar? Does it affect your property value? And then we explain why it does not. So we were very communicative. We gave them my name and number. Charlene Morton. Charlene, raise your hand from Pine Gate. Charlene's number and email there. We had a lot of people reach out to us. So we took that step. On the development and ownership, Pine Gate Renewables have a tab here that tells who they are. They will operate it. They will also own it. If you go to the next tab, commitment to sustainability. This is one of the reasons why, among the many reasons, I think Pine Gate Renewables is the best solar company anybody could have developed. They have had sheep on some of their farms. They have had allowed their land to be used for an apiary, for beekeeping. They use fences that wildlife can get through, but children cannot. They have in a recent facility they just had somewhere else, they designed it so to have wildlife corridors going through it, so that deer and other of the larger animals can actually have a pet. This is the type of company that actually cares about those things. And again, they do it right. On economic benefits, there'll be about 550 jobs over a year's time, and they try to hire local. This is a company that doesn't just do it, they actually work with the local economic development agencies to get people out. A lot of these skills are transferable. And of course, as we say here, you have about a 2,000% increase in taxes when you change this from an agricultural exemption to a more commercial tax base.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
A couple of questions on that. There's a rollback here you mentioned. Do you have any idea how much the rollback is going to be on this property?
I do not, but 3 years is substantial.
Right.
And the company pays, the Pine Gate pays that, not ZB paid.
Well, yeah, I think from the county's perspective, they'll be happy to receive it from whichever entity pays it, and that's great.
Yeah.
I didn't know whether you knew what that number was going to be. I think the commissioners will probably.
Let's make sure we have that number.
Yeah, I can follow up with that.
And the percentage increase there of 2,000, I guess you probably don't have that number either, but will that be decreasing with depreciation?
It does.
Year across?
It does. This is a year before versus first year. But there will be a depreciation of the personal property, not a decline in the property tax. There is already a discounted property tax by statute, but it is, that in itself is substantially higher than the agricultural exemption.
So at this point, you don't have an estimate on what the tax value will be, assuming it's approved?
No, but tell you what, Charlene and Dahlia, that's point number one, to find out, to get that information.
Yeah.
If you move on, we did put Scotland County zoning ordinance, special use permit standards here in case you want to look at it. These are the items that we are required to address as this goes forward to the Board of Commissioners. And after that is a statement of compliance where we say in great detail how and why this project does comply. If you look into that, what we have several photographs about starting on about page 6. You will see that this is not only has the large transmission lines going through it, it's next to a railroad, it's next to a highway, it has a gas pipeline that goes through it. There are several lines out there. It also has on the other side of the highway, there's a asphalt plant. So it is surrounded by something that this would not be out of keeping with. And then we have some information here at the next 2 tabs about health and safety. I'm going to introduce Mr. Sandifer in just a minute. If you look at the tab equipment, everybody is always curious about the panels themselves. Pine Gate only uses panels from a tier 1 manufacturer. These are determined, whether you are tier 1 or not is determined by standards that Forbes has come up with And you have to have been in operation for several years. You have to be a company that does research and development. You have to be very well capitalized. And these are what they use. And these panels have a 30 to 40 year lifespan. Chemicals, there's a statement on that. There's actually less chemicals on using a solar farm. It's usually just around where the fences are. It's less chemicals used than you would have on a regular farm. Stream protection. Shannon's going to address that just on a higher level, but we have to follow every single requirement of the Clean Water Act from 1972, all the state act, sedimentation and erosion control. We can't go out into the streams. We cannot go out into the wetlands. We have to protect them just like anybody else would who is developing land. There is a market impact study here by Richard Kirkland. Mr. Kirkland has been called on many occasions the world expert on the impact of solar farms. He has done about 750 of these studies in about 20 states, and to show that there is no impact. And then we have to address architectural appeal, and we did that photographically. That's the last tab. There is a 125 foot water tank at the southeast corner. There is a transmission line. And then the homes that we showed are in most cases, they're the closest ones, but they are a few thousand feet away. They won't see it. Nobody inside the facility can see them, but because we have to meet the standard, we did those essays anyway. And then we closed showing how desolate that dirt road is. It's actually a state road up along the northern part. I'm glad to answer questions, but I do have a couple of people here to give you some additional details.
Can I ask you one more quick question? You might try to dominate this, but I noticed there's a Curry Common Cemetery, and I would assume from what you're saying that this project, if it's approved, will not affect access to that cemetery.
Absolutely. The access to that is off of McFarland Road. There's a gate right when you come in that swings. It was open both times that I was there, but nothing will affect that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let me introduce Jen Lester with Kimley Horn. Kimley Horn is, I'm showing a lot of prejudice here. I think they are the best engineering firm you can work with on anything related to solar. Jen is a professional engineer. Jen, if you would just give them a little higher level, more detail about the site.
Yes. Sorry if not everyone can see this, but the same site plan that you see in your packet. As Tom said, my name is Jen Lester. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of North Carolina. Currently work for Kimley Horn as a civil engineer in Raleigh, North Carolina. As a quick recap, Gum Swamp Solar, approximately 760 acres located in the southwest corner of Scotland County. In the southwest corner of the site is the proposed point of interconnection along the existing transmission line. Around the perimeter of the site, there are proposed 50-foot setbacks from all adjacent properties and 65-foot setbacks from the right-of-way. Also along the perimeter, you will see proposed or existing landscape buffers shown in green or yellow respectively, both along adjacent residences, adjacent properties, and along all public right-of-ways. After this site plan was submitted, the site has been environmentally delineated for stream and wetland features. So what you see here is public data. During construction, there will be erosion control measures in place to protect and buffer discharges to those features. Let's see. I mean, in general, that is the site. In my professional opinion, this site meets all of the requirements that the Scotland County ordinance has put in place for this type of use. If you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do you have any measures in place for a wildland fire to get in there? Do y'all have like a perimeter road as a fire break?
So there are typically roads that will lead to all of the inverter skids that will be proposed on site, and that has to follow, international fire code. It will go through building permit submittal to the basically to the fire departments here, which will have to approve that before the site can begin construction.
I just was wondering if one got inside the fence and that all that equipment and
Mhm.
it
I'll
can
answer that.
Oh, yeah.
be ugly.
It's an electrical.
Oh, you want me to do it now? Okay.
Why don't you just, let me just introduce Chris Sanford. Chris is the jack of all trades for every question anybody could ask about solar. But he's an electrical engineer. Chris,
Yeah.
why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you. My name is Chris Sanford. I'm an independent consultant engineer. I work for a lot of developers. I've been working for Pine Gate for a long time. I would say 10 years or more, and they are a good company. I'm a graduate electrical engineer, and I'm a professional engineer in North Carolina and multiple other states, as well as an electrical contractor in North Carolina. And so with unlimited classification, so I've put in the high voltage. I put the substations in and the interconnections in. I don't put the panels and that kind of stuff in. I have done it, but that's not my strong point. I like the higher margin stuff, so I go with the high voltage stuff. And also serve on the National County Planning Board. And so we have approved so far 38. I just got to read my email just then. Our planning director just sent us our package before we meet next Monday. And all we have is subdivisions. We got subdivision after subdivision after subdivision that Raleigh's now expanding east towards us. And so we don't have water and we don't have, we have a little bit of county water, not much, but no county sewer. So they're taking a lot of farmland up in houses, and that's all I'm here to talk about. But to answer your question about there's nothing in the panels that's flammable. It's got some conductors that are coated with insulation that could catch on fire if you get them hot enough, but they typically are about this high off the ground. So I've never heard of a problem with that. And so they have to buy insurance, or they do buy insurance. And so that's part of the process to keep the fuel down. They don't want a lot of fuel. So you're right. If you let the grass grow up this high and if it gets dry in October, if somebody throws a match, that can go a long way. If you've ever seen a wildfire. So the whole point of the maintenance, the vegetative maintenance, is to keep the fuel load down. So there is not ever going to be, I've never been by one that had a high fuel load in it that could cause damage to the equipment in there. And that's done on purpose for that purpose, is to just keep the fuel load down.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I went to a meeting where we went inside the solar field. And that was one of the things brought up, because I was actually with the fire department, and they explained to us how important it was not to get around those solar panels, the wiring, the insulation had been burned or whatever, and spraying water. They were talking about how dangerous it was. And I'm like, well, but you're right, the grass gets mowed, but if it didn't, I'm just curious if y'all had a road or something, just because you'd have a mess,
Basically, it complies. They will be in total compliance with the National Electrical Code.
Yeah.
So the National Electrical Code requires a disconnect switch. It's called a service disconnect switch, and it's got real specific technical components of that switch. But that switch is going to be right on the outside of the fence, and it's going to have a padlock on it. And just, people always say, well, what if somebody goes there and have a heart attack, whatever? The same bolt cutters they use to cut the chain off or the lock off the gate to get in will be the same bolt cutters. They can go over there and cut that and open that gang switch. And the fire departments and rescue and first responders should be trained to know it has appropriate signage. It will be marked as a service disconnect switch, and they should have the training to know where to go, and so they can totally isolate it from the grid.
Gotcha.
So before they even enter, they can cut it open and then go cut the lock to go in, if that's what they want to do.
Yeah, I'll just ask a question. We get a lot of big fires, and that's out in Sand Hills, and They can get ugly, and I was just curious,
Oh, yeah.
besides the grasses, was there anything else you?
If you let the fuel load get away from you, then you're exactly correct. That would be problematic, but these guys run these things, they know what.
And there's
needs
gonna
to-
be somebody there every day probably checking things, right? Don't they have you
No,
something that
I wouldn't
hard?
say every day. They may have somebody out there in doing this time of year, because if you send one crew out there, if you try to mow or to, mechanically control the vegetation, it might take them a cycle, and they probably start back over where they started. So there may be a crew out there this time of year doing a lot of mowing, if it's rain and that kind of stuff.
Now, has this land gotta be cleared?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Y'all gotta have an erosion patrol?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
yes.
There'll be erosion control and sediment, the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality will issue a permit for that. So they'll have, Jen or somebody will have that design, and it'll be sealed, and it'll be approved by them before they, because not only does it have to be cut, they have to grub the stumps out.
Yeah.
And so that moves with some soil. Now, they won't do a lot of grading. That's, they use piles that go straight in the ground. So there's, especially on land that doesn't have a lot of contour in it, you don't do very little grading, but when they move those trees out of, and not all of it, some of it is.
Now, this farm is good for what, 30 years?
Well, they've probably got a 40-year contract, but I don't know that. That would be answered at Pine Gate 40.
And what's gonna happen after, let's say they abandon the solar farm, what's gonna happen then?
What they got in business? I mean, there's probably money in escrow.
Let me just answer that one question.
Okay.
This is a company, first of all, it's very well capitalized, but when you put in and build a solar farm, you're banking on what's called a power purchase agreement with Duke Energy. Duke Energy is not going away. And the power purchase agreement is covering all your costs. All of your costs are returned. Now, it's a ton of costs, but they're returned in 7 or 8 years. So once you can overcome that hoop, it's a cash cow. And any financing is not at the company level, it's at the Gum Swamp Solar level. So it's almost impossible for something that has very, very, very few expenses and a lot of income to go out of business. So the chances of somebody who you just approved over here, like for that car dealership, of him going out of business is very high. But something like this is lower than, I don't know what it would be lower than, but it's pretty low.
And I would say this, and I should have mentioned this, I'm also a farmer, and I have a farm that has 100 acres of panels on it. And people have asked me that question, I said, I couldn't wait. I'd love that now. If they gave me those panels and all that equipment, and it became mine, and I've got a purchase power agreement with Duke, you wouldn't see me at any more county meetings. I'd be done. I'd probably be, fishing a hunt or somewhere like that. So that would be a great thing but to answer your question about the length of time, it's maybe a 40-year lease. I don't know that all equipment will last that long. The panels generally have like a 25-year life on them. The transformers, other equipment, it's probably closer to 40. Some of the electronic equipment probably won't last that long, probably only last 15, 20 years. But those are just components, just like if your car, you use a water pump, you go replace it. If you use alternators, you just replace it. And that's what's going to happen on there. It may, at some point, like say in 25, 30 years, they may repanel it. If they can go and spend all that money putting new panels in, then they're probably going to want some more lease years but they're not going to build any more nuclear plants in North Carolina or probably United States. Duke's already said they're going to take out 9,000 megawatts of coal in North Carolina or in the Carolinas. And so we've only got 7,000 megawatts connected up to this point in North Carolina. So there's a big gap. I'm seeing with nothing else on the horizon. It's in 25 a year, people still going to want light. Still, they're going to want refrigeration. They're still going to want air conditioning. They're still going to want hot water to take baths in. So, I don't see unless, the landowner wants to do something different with it. I don't see it going away anytime soon. So like I say, it's a really good cash flow, so it's the chance of, and if they did go out of business or if Duke went out of business, guess what? It'll be just like it did last year when South Carolina Electric and Gas went out of business. What happened? Dominion Energy, they bought them out. Their lights never flickered. Now it's just, people get a Dominion Energy South Carolina bill instead of South Carolina Electric and Gas because of that nuclear plant that they had that went defunct. And so if something were to happen to Duke, it'll be Southern Company. They got from Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, they'll just take into Carolina. So that it'll be part of that. I mean, if you're worried about Duke going out of business, I mean, somebody's going to backfill that. There's too much demand for electricity. There's somebody not wanting to supply that. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Generally, what the overview is that there's nothing new here. Like I just told you, there's 7,000 megawatts already in North Carolina. Okay. And so the galvanized steel, the inverters, that type of technology is well over 50 years old. The panels, they're even older than that. They use polysilicon type of panel, so there's no harsh chemicals in it. The only thing that would possibly be in it that cause you some concern would be lead that used to make the connections, but it's in grams and milligrams, the amount of lead in each panel. It's a very small amount. Much more lead in a shotgun shell. If you go out there and start shooting doves or something on the property and you spread that lead all over, that's much more hazardous than lead sequestered in the panel. The panels have the silicon wafers that are between plastic and glass, and they got framed in aluminum. That's what they mount to the rack. They rotate, follow the sun, and they send that DC, the same kind of electricity in your battery starts your car. They send it to an inverter. It changes to AC, which is the type of electricity that is burning in here today, is lighting these fluorescent fixtures in here. And so there's a transformer that matches voltage. That's it. That's all it is to it. It's expensive equipment, but it's not complicated. So that's an overview. I'll be glad to try and answer any specific questions you might have.
Just to be the devil's advocate, you're saying 30 years, hydrogen power comes around and is cheaper than anything else, and all of a sudden the solar panels, you are at the end of your 30-year or 35-year agreement, and I don't know who would answer this, but what is the company's responsibility for taking the company back to the condition it was in if
That's going to be in
happens?
the service. That's going to be in my lease agreement. That's what it said. And I'll assume this landowner has the same terms.
Yes.
I know we've been through some of us have been through a lot of
Right.
solar applications, and that's one of the questions
Right. Well,
that usually comes up.
that's kind of a standard. That's a standard clause to bring it back. And so typically, even if you take it out and don't use it I was going to ask you, if you come to hydrogen, where's the hydrogen coming from?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Because hydrogen is made that's how they make it, is with solar panels. So, I mean, that's how they make the DC, the electrons. That's where the hydrogen comes from. So I agree with you. Hydrogen is going to be probably down the road, especially for vehicles and stuff, because people want the lengthy trip. But the hydrogen still requires electricity to make. So if you come up with another fuel source, I don't know what it would be. I mean, if you say a fuel cell, okay, well, guess what? You still have to have, you still have to have electricity for that. So batteries, and they're doing all kinds of stuff with batteries, liquid metal. We're using lithium ion right now. There are some, I call it rust battery, where they take steel and rust it, and then let it, and they go back and forth and rust it. There's lots of battery technology, but it still requires energy for all of that. And so if it's not coming from coal, if it's not coming from nuclear, it's either pretty much got to come from water, in some hydroelectric plant, or it's going to come from wind, which we don't have that much in the Carolinas. It's coming from sun, or it's going to come from natural gas. And so that's our fuel sources going forward. So I don't see it really going away. I see it growing.
Yeah, I don't see it going away. Just being the devil's advocate.
I think we've just kind of stepped through the door a little bit, and I think in 10 years we'll look back and we'll say, wow, you know, we thought we had something 7,000 megawatts, we probably have 70,000 megawatts in 10 years. I mean, because that's where it's going. Especially if Duke cuts off 9,000 megawatts of coal, and that's what they're bragging on. They're, you know, Lynn Good says that all the time. They're real proud of the stance that they're taking to be net zero by 2050 and to be net 50 by 2030. That's where we're headed. It's good for. This man asked me one time, I don't know, it's been a year or so ago, what's the downside? And I asked our planning staff, and they said, we ain't figured it out yet. We don't know what the downside for solar is. It's good, you know. And so it's safe. It will not harm any of the residents of the county. And it's a lot safer than any other type of energy with this kind of concentration I know of. I mean, you can't if you come in and put a natural gas and put a storage there, you got a huge amount of energy that could be potential. I mean, a big tank of natural gas it could be explosive. And if you've got coal plants, you know, you got coal ash, you've got NOxes, SOxes, you got a bunch of carbon dioxide, which is greenhouse gases. If you go to nuclear, you're gonna have nuclear spent, you know, the fuel rods. So, I mean, that's, as far as something not having a downside, this is for energy in this concentrated form. This is it.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Yeah, I'm asking.
Guests, no, as guests of the
meeting.
I was just wondering how many other projects Pine Gate has in operation.
Yeah. Hey, Charlie Morton, the solar developer on the project with Pine Gate Renewables. The number of projects, I think I want to say north of 100, but we have about almost a gigawatt of power operational, about 700 to 800 megawatts, and another, about 10 times that much in development across North Carolina, South Carolina, and even as far as Arizona, Oregon, kind of nationwide at this point.
Are you familiar with Sharon Harris?
Yes.
That's an 800 megawatt plant. So basically, she's saying we got a Sharon Harris online, and 10 times that much in the pipeline.
That much in North Carolina?
Not
No, that's
only in North Carolina,
nationwide.
but
Just the
because,
United States, okay.
yeah, nationwide, although we are a North Carolina company, so being founded and based here, you know, most of those projects are here.
I was about to say, we're gonna be living on top of them.
Well, I mean, they're putting them in some places.
Or under them, not on top of them.
The land is the best suitable for it. I mean, they're not putting them downtown Charlotte. I mean, that's not where they're going. So, other questions? I'm gonna sit down.
That's all we have. I don't, Charlene or Dolly, is there anything you'd like to add?
Sure, yeah, just filling in some of the blanks. I was kind of taking notes. So we do expect the useful life of the project to be around 40 years, and we do expect the total tax revenue over that term to be in the $4 million range, probably like 4 to 4.5. Again, an estimate based on what we see the project as right now, which can change as we go on in development.
And we're glad to answer any more questions. We certainly want your support as this goes forward to the Board of Commissioners.
I think this board has been very supportive of solar, but we've been through some growing pains, and I believe that we've got the questions that we needed answered, already asked and answered from you. Does anybody else have any questions of anyone here representing Gum Swamp?
The only question I got is where's all the deer going to?
Oh, Lord.
Your backyard?
I'll take a few more.
Well, the habitat y'all gonna make inside the fence or in between the panels, is it just grassy areas? Is it gonna be trees? I mean, there's another fuel source, because there's a bunch of idiots out who could break through the fence at night and set your place afire just because they don't like it, so.
Well, and that's, of course, that's the same thing you can say about a rock quarry or a land.
Yeah, you're right.
That's fenced.
Right.
There is a picture.
I'm just curious more than anything is what kind of vegetation that's gonna be. And
I think Jack can go ahead and answer that.
Jennifer can go ahead and.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously existing, it's primarily, farm fields with, surrounded by a little bit of wooded areas. So in that proposed condition, we typically see is meadow grass beneath the panels, and around the panels. And then of course we maintain some of that wooded area along environmental features and any perimeter areas that we're preserving.
But I thought he said there was gonna be some down the interior. Did I misunderstand that?
Yeah.
Any meadow
There
grass?
will be grass, but it's always grass native to the area. And you want the grass there to hold the soil.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I thought you were putting some natural habitat throughout the project, not just the perimeter.
There may be some.
Maybe I misunderstood that.
I
I'm just
can
curious.
speak to that. I think you're talking about the wildlife permeable
Yeah.
fencing, so that's like
No.
7.
He mentioned earlier, if I remember correctly, that there was gonna be some, habitat. I'm just curious, see what it
Now,
is.
let me just clarify. What I was saying is that this is a company that's open to, depending upon the circumstance, and every single facility it comes
Right.
to Pine Gate with different needs, different possibilities. There was a possibility in a recent facility in Person County to design it so that you had discrete sections with wildlife corridors. Every site doesn't offer that.
I mean, like a gap between the panels.
Yes.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I was
And-
thinking, plant
That's
going, I
exactly
was just
right.
curious. I mean, I'm not against it. I'm just was curious
And if
what you were gonna do there, because
if you
not
look
a
at
lot live in this sandy soil.
under the tab wildlife sustainability or commitment to sustainability, there are some pictures of a type of fence. I've always called it goat fences. It's what you see around.
Square rectangle or
Yeah,
smaller.
but
Yeah,
you actually
yeah.
can have, they show a fox going through it, small
Right.
fox.
Right.
But everything from skunks, raccoons, you name it, can go through there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it connects them to their breeding grounds where they can get food.
Right.
They designed this working with the North Carolina chapter of the Nature Conservancy
Mhm.
as a way to be friendlier and to have a less of an impact
Right.
when they went from these little 5 megawatts to the larger 50, 60, 70. And Pine Gate is one of the few companies, I don't know of anybody else who's doing these things. So it's a good company to have developing in Scotland County.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see it, because that sounds like there's being more done there than other places.
And if there's any wetlands, they will be avoided and that will be left as a natural area.
I know there's a large solar array up in Ellerby. Is this gonna be very similar to that? Have you seen that?
All solar arrays are pretty much the same. This will have some vegetation around it that nobody can see it visually. But, yeah, it would be in all respects, pretty much the same.
Okay. Any other questions, discussions? Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve it.
Second?
Second.
I am going to abstain because the particular that signed the paperwork is a relative. So all those besides me in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved.
Thank you.
We thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Are you one of the neighbors?
No, I'm just.
Oh, Tom Carroll. And you can send me the and I'll be glad to send you all kinds of, it's in that.
It's learning curve, trust.
You have a farm?
I've done here, look at
Yes, John family. Usually the abandonment costs would be covered with some sort of escrow account during the county outage.
We have some additional business,
Yeah, that's between those two.
wait just a couple of minutes and let these folks get their stuff together and we'll carry on with our whole business. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Y'all take care.
So the original, can we have one?
But we're happy to answer any questions.
Oh, well,
Okay, the only other thing we have listed on the agenda is discussion of planning and zoning board pay increase. How many of you have read the documents that Jeannie has given us, proposed changes in ordinances? Well, I have read through it, and in there, it says that we are volunteers at the discretion for no pay at all. So right now, it's the discretion of the county to give us $25 per meeting. I have yet to accumulate enough data from the other counties to get a comparison on what they pay, if they pay anything at all. So until our next meeting, do we have any discussion on this? Because I suggest we table it till the next meeting, and hopefully I can, like John, get a little break here from work and have some time to get some more information. Does anybody have any discussion on that?
I'm just getting real concerned about Lumber River Council of Governments getting this information. I'm very empathetic to Jean and her medical situation, but we're getting underdone, guys.
It's a shame we're spending that kind of money. There's no one else that they can send besides her
Exactly.
with the knowledge and know-how to help us. Why waste I was a little offended by us to read this, prepare our questions by email to send it to them for them to answer. Why not have another representative here? Is she the only person in their whole company that is qualified to go through stuff?
Yeah, I think we probably all have had those same questions. I'm very disappointed that she is not available.
Yeah, I hate it for her and her health conditions, but I just can't believe the company don't have another person they can send down.
We have to get all this through our systems and understand it, make the changes and improve it before we can send it on to the Board of Commissioners. And that has to be done by June 1st, July 1st, 2021, June 30th, 2022. Yeah, June 30th, 2022.
Well, and I think that, if this board is frustrated, it would be a good thing to communicate that to the county manager and to the Board of Commissioners, because the commissioners made the determination to place that contract with, Todd. And, if they're not going to be able to perform the function, they're certainly not complying with the contract. So, if the board's not pleased with it, then I think some communication with the manager and maybe even board members is not out of line in order to see that they perform what they've agreed to do. I mean, there were other choices. Some other choices may have been more expensive, and there may have been some that were less expensive. I don't know, but
This can have me a lot of help. So I can't, Mr. Chairman, just get with Brooke, get with Kevin and ask them to reach out to the COG and say, we either need someone here to help us get through it.
Someone
Or make a
knowledgeable.
decision.
The last person wasn't specialized at this, and to me, wasn't his field of expertise in what we're doing.
Jim Perry.
I don't remember his name, but yeah.
Yeah, the first gentleman,
He was a nice guy, but this wasn't his specialty.
he said his area was this.
Yeah.
So that makes me think they have certain people and certain things. And yeah, and that was the whole purpose of that, so.
Well, they need to be put on notice that we, assume that what this board feels this way, that they're not in compliance with the contract. I mean, I'm certain there's a contract somewhere that has the requirements that they're supposed to meet.
And you see, you asked if any of us have been through there. I don't want to take my time to go through there until you got that representative here that we can immediately ask questions to, because a lot of this is just, a lot of it's going to be standard rules that the state has put forth that you just basically have to accept. And, understanding was another thing. A lot of them I think I all kind of understand, but if I had any question, I'd love her to have her here or whoever, their representative to ask the question to.
And I know that, someone at one time mentioned that they thought that what they might do is just rubber stamp somebody else's like Bladen County. And I've been through some of Bladen Counties, compared it, and I will have to say they did not rubber stamp it. They have done it specifically for Scotland County. So not excusing the delay, but they have done a good bit of work on it for us. So, well, if it's the will of the board, I'd be more than happy to get with Brooke and approach this with, Kevin and see what we can round up.
Do you need a motion and a resolution from the board?
Probably make it more official if we did it that way.
I so move.
Second. All in favor, say aye. I will take that under my wing. Any other old business or any other business we need to discuss tonight? If not, do I have a motion we adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. I get to go hook up a dishwasher.